Best part of the show, everyone's favorite, the Ask Jerry portion of the show. I have a few of them too. And by the way, you can still send some our way. We'd appreciate that right there on the right-hand side of your screen. William asked the question, is white available on the regular VJ24, the non-X version?
That's a very good question, and one we get quite a bit, especially since the VJ24 came to the market first. There are a lot of people who already had that when the X came out. So do you want the short answer or the long answer?
Kind of a timed show.
Okay, so the short answer is unfortunately not. The reason for that is that the 24X, as I mentioned earlier, has an internal ink recirculation system that was built into the printer to circulate the white and metallic ink to make sure everything continues to run smoothly. The basic VJ24 does not. So if you were to put white or metallic ink in a regular 628 or VJ24, you would not have the same experience in terms of trouble-free use of those inks. And so white and metallic ink are not available and not supported for the standard printer.
Concerning the actual X, though, the question comes up, Wilmer words it well. It says, can you add the white and metallic configuration later, or do you have to decide at the time of purchase?
Right, and that's kind of the opposite question. That's a very good one, because a lot of people, when they get this printer, they may not be ready to tackle the spot color metallic and the process and so on and so forth. And a lot of people decide to start out with a basic CMYK set just to get their hands wet or get their feet wet, and then they add the white and metallic later on. And that's a very good strategy, and that's perfectly acceptable. Once you've added the white and the metallic ink to your printer, then you can't switch back later. It's a one-way street, because the white and metallic have certain characteristics that make permanent changes in those ink lines inside the printer, but you don't have to have those at the very beginning. You can start with the 6-color configuration or even dual CMYK, and then add the white and metallic when you're ready to add this to your product.
We kind of position this as a white metallic or fluorescent. We need to make it clear that it's not just a constant interchangeable. You can't load it up with white metallic and then say, oh, let's switch over to this.
Right. Yeah. Basically, if you're going to prefer the fluorescent magenta and fluorescent yellow option, you need to either start with that or start with the dual CMYK or the 6-color mode and then add the fluorescence. But if you are running white and metallic, then you can't switch that or convert that to the fluorescent option. So you have to kind of think about what your applications are going to be, what your customers may want, and buy either the fluorescent or the white and metallic, or one of each.
No, I like that. I like that. Sounds good. So a lot of people are wondering if this is going to slow it down. You know, we really pushed last month with the VJ24 that this is a fast unit, but now we're talking about spot coloring and going a different route with the X, really slowing it down?
No, actually the maximum print speed on both printers is still 433 square feet per hour, which is pretty doggone fast. And that is a function of the print modes. And you actually have more print modes in the X than you do in the VJ24, of course, because you're supporting different ink configurations, but you do still have the capacity to print at up to 433 square feet per hour, so you don't sacrifice any speed when you buy this model. You just have extra utility.
Preston asked, how well does the metallic show up on banners?
On banners, that's a very good question, and I don't know if we got into this in the presentation, and thanks for bringing that up, Preston. The metallic shows up depending on the gloss level of what you're printing on. And actually in the sample kit we have an example of that, because most of the samples in the kit are on glossy vinyl, but there's one in there that's on matte vinyl, just so that you can see the difference between the effect on glossy and matte vinyl. So when you're printing on glossy media, you're going to get a very loud pop from the metallic ink, but if you print the exact same image on matte vinyl, you'll see it's a much more muted effect. So it really depends a lot on the gloss level of the media.
Looking here from a question from Robert, it says, can you do white, metallic, and fluorescent colors instead of the light cyan and light magenta?
Oh, that's a very good question, and the answer is no. The reason for that is that there are 2 spot color channels set up in the printer driver, and those are the positions 3 and 4. Those are reserved for the spot colors. Everything else is your traditional CMYK plus the light and light cyan and light magenta channels, and those are in the standard RIP engine. So there are only 2 channels in this printer reserved for spot colors, and so those are going to either be white and metallic or fluorescent yellow and fluorescent magenta.
We talked about the fluorescents. Of course, you have the fluorescent yellow, you have fluorescent magenta, but we can make other fluorescents as well.
Right, and there's a really cool process for that we've developed here in-house. Actually, Ian Caproon did a great job of working on that. You can actually overlay in your design the fluorescent magenta over top of the fluorescent yellow, and of course the printer will print it as fluorescent orange. Now what you want to be mindful of is the fact that the ink limits come into play here as well. If you print either of the fluorescent channels with 100% ink limit, you're going to get oversaturation and puddling. So even if you're just going for just a pure yellow, you'd want to print that at about 60%. likewise with the fluorescent magenta. If you're mixing them, you want to go about 60% with one and about 40 on the other, and then you get a nice intense fluorescent orange. And we'll have a tutorial we'll upload to the support page on our website. We'll have all that information. Speaking of which, if you go to cyanwarehouse.com/blog-support, that is our support page, and you'll see there's a new post there with all of these documents that we've mentioned throughout the webinar, where you can download those, including the PDF with the multi-metallic spot color library, and the profiles, presets, all those things are on our blog on the support page, so you can access those right now if you'd like.
That's the worst address in the world, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Can we not get there from the Cyan Warehouse site? Don't we have a link to it?
Yes. Click on support at the top of cyanwarehouse.com. Yes, go to cyanwarehouse.com, and at the top of the page click on support. That takes you to the blog, and then you can surf there and find all those nifty VJ24X documents.
Deborah asked, what is the accuracy over length in contour cutting? And so I guess that's going to relate back to our cutter, of course, but I guess the question also is, since we're looking at a new way of laying those registration marks, is it still accurate?
And that's a very good question. Since we're using a different process, there is a chance for a slight misalignment. I don't cover this in this webinar, but in the previous webinar on the VJ24, I talked about the fact that when you design your decals, you should always add a stroke on the outside of the perimeter of the print area, so you can have kind of a margin for error and place the contour cut path inside that stroke, so that if there's any misalignment, then you're still inside the printed area when you finish the decal and weed it. What I have done, and what I've been doing when I produce these samples, is I do a batch of about 15 at a time, and I print those and send them to the printer, and then when you contour cut them, you can design a batch of 12, send that as an EPS file, and then when you open that EPS file, you can actually make copies of that and print 36 at a time. And then when you do the contour cut, what you can do is, since the original file just has those 12, you're going to have a set of registration marks around each set of 12 decals. So when you do the contour cut, you're simply going to cut that batch of 12, and then you can move to the next registration mark and cut that batch, and so on and so forth. So you can actually do a pretty long run on the printer and contour cut them in groups at a time and get better accuracy that way. But again, you should also design your graphics so that there's a full bleed and a stroke that gives you a little bit of a margin of error. A very good question.
What is the method used to determine the cost of printing per square foot using the PrismJET?
The standard retail price for any printed decals is $8 per square foot. With standard ink, you're looking at a print cost of about 25 cents per square foot. With the higher cost of the white and metallic, you're going to have to adjust that based on the cartridge price. But you're going to want to add, I would say, at least a 25% premium to your end user, to your customer, to compensate for the cost of the white and metallic ink. So that seems to be an industry standard. And again, it's going to depend on your market. If you're doing Yeti mugs, which sell for $49 without any decoration, then you're going to be able to charge a premium there. If you're doing standard signs and graphics, it may not be as easy to do, but a 25% markup is going to cover your added costs.
Okay, let's do a few more questions. A couple of application questions. One, can you use this for T-shirts? Another question, can you support direct-to-print to a magnetic film? So tackle both of those, please.
Very good questions. The T-shirt one first. As I'd mentioned earlier in response to the question about banners, the effect of the metallic ink is going to depend on what you're printing on. It works best or is most visible on glossy media. Unfortunately, in the garment decoration market, people don't want glossy media on their shirts because it looks like a sticker. So all of the solvent printable T-shirt transfer media that we sell and that is manufactured, in fact, it has a matte finish. And so if you use the metallic spot colors on a T-shirt transfer, it's not going to pop as much as you might think, or nearly as much as you would see on a glossy vinyl. There are some alternatives. We do have some metallic T-shirt transfer films available. We have glitter print and Caesar color print glitter, and those might be more appealing options because the glitter is baked into the film and doesn't come from the ink. You can print on magnets, but again, and so if you print on a glossy magnetic material, you're going to have a nice pop with that from the silver metallic ink. The caveats there is you want to print on 20 mil magnetic material, and you want to cut it to less than 24 inches wide so it's easier to feed to the printer, but that is another option as well.
We're going to go ahead and bring this webinar to a close. As always, thank you to everyone who attended, and please know that we we are still here to answer any questions you might have about the PrismJET VJ24. You could always do direct email, or you can just call Jerry and say, hey, I have more questions.
That's right. Whether it's something we failed to cover or an area that you just need clarification on, or if you'd like us to send you some print samples, you can email me at jerry.barracks@cyanwarehouse.com, or feel free to reply to our webinar follow-up email, which we'll be sending your way very soon.
And for Jerry and myself, thank you for attending this Cyan Warehouse webinar featuring the PrismJET VJ24X, and enjoy the remainder of your week.